Previously, Kovar, the last of the giants, led the group further into the mountain that he called home. Eventually, they reached a room that had a large stone orb floating in the middle of it. There were unfamiliar constellations carved into the ceiling. Kovar stepped between two stone pillars and placed a palm on each one. He closed his eyes, and the ley lines and stars in the room flared with light. Then the constellations started to shift. The orb in the center of the room suddenly was covered in mountain ranges and continents. It was a globe. It showed all of the known world and a lot more that was unknown to the group. Other worlds, other planes, other realities. Sean and Taria's hands started to glow. Kovar suddenly called out, "Behold Aurelian," as ley lines appeared all over the globe. Until that moment, Sean's gaze had been focused on her glowing hands, but the moment he said Aurelian, her attention was jerked back towards him. Meanwhile, the eye on Taria's skin was darting around wildly while her attention was focused on the ley lines. Taria immediately could tell that the ley lines seemed to follow the waystones, or perhaps the waystones followed the ley lines? Where the group was standing was one of the brightest places on the globe. Ryland told Kovar he had so many questions that he didn't know where to begin. Tornak, being Tornak, asked about Aurelian being a rock. Kovar explained that the living rock that made up the world was Aurelian. The young folk had sensed the ley lines and called them a god. That was what they worshipped. He also explained that there were other worlds, other planes, other spheres of existence, and in every one of them, the room they were in existed. In their world, the caretakers were the giants. In others, who knew? Black dots appeared all over the globe. The shadow spawn were breaking through more and more. He told them that the seals were failing everywhere, and the war was tearing the veil further. That was what Thalicros wanted. He was depending on the world to destroy itself. It quickly became clear that Kovar had no interest in actually helping the group save the world. The group kept pushing, though, trying to convince him to help them, even if he didn't want to be involved himself. Kovar decided to test the group, and he called forth a blood fury for the group to fight and show their worth by creating a sigil and then breaking it. The blood fury was essentially a swarm of razor-sharp snowflakes of swirling death, and it was clearly a shadow spawn. It was rough in a few places, but the overall fight went fairly well. They were able to send the shadow spawn back to where it came from. In the aftermath, Kovar told the group to sit as he had a truth for them. It wasn't a kind truth, but it was one they needed to hear. He was tired, but he would tell them. After the Praetors destroyed his people a century earlier, he was done. The young folk had destroyed the giant, so he didn't care about protecting them. He told them that he took the Sword of Veils, the key to the Waystones, to the boiling lake and the scorched basin. The veil was naturally thin there, so he threw the sword into the lake and walked away. The world ran on a cycle. Thalicros would come into the world and would make his way to Avanos. Previously, a giant would be there to take in the power of the sword to release the magic back into the world. Only a giant could hold the power long enough to release it, but the giant would die. Kovar wasn't willing to make that sacrifice. They'd have to find another way. M, the scholar who'd written to Thalrisian, had also written to Kovar. They were one of the only young folk who he was willing to speak with. He suggested the group work with them. He explained that the reason Taria and Sean glowed occasionally was because they were part of Aurelian's favored. It was a scar from a bloodline that once helped with a sacrifice. Taria's tendency to shift into a giant-like form probably also stemmed from that. They talked some more, with Kovar continuing to insist that he wasn't willing to help save the world, but he wouldn't stop the group from trying. He was so very tired. Tornak asked Kovar to tell them one more story. He wanted to hear something good and joyous about his people. Kovar told them about his wife and son. They'd loved to watch the lights on Heaven's Dance, but he couldn't force himself to go up to the top of the mountain anymore because it made him remember them. His last words were, "Tell M that I kept my post." Then his body turned to stone. After a minute, Yuri stood and walked out. The ley lines were glowing brightly, even though it wasn't Heaven's Dance, as the last of the giants left the world. Ryland made his way over to the globe and started flipping through the worlds. He decided to try to cast Contact Other Planes to reach out to one of them at random, which may or may not have been a world where a group called the Keepers existed. It was almost as if it was the 5-year anniversary of a D&D group playing together, and the DM and one of the most chaotic players couldn't resist a callback to the previous campaign. Weird, huh? When he reached out, he managed to get in touch with a woman named Leowyn. She talked to Rylet about her world and a group there named the Keepers who'd stopped the darkness. Eventually, she told him she'd try to send a gift across the plains. Meanwhile, while that was happening, Taria carved remembrance for Kovar. Once she was done, she rejoined the conversation, although she'd missed a number of things. Valrizian realized that the globe functions as a waystone, and he touched his oathstone to it. His crystal flared, and he saw several waystones in the ocean start to connect to each other and shift. A number of ocean currents changed. He heard a woman speak and tell him that he was close to reaching his goal. On the other side of the room, a gift from the other plane appeared for the group. And that is where we left off.